They had arrived late and laughing. 3 friends, cheap beer, wet jackets, the kind of confidence that only existed while the road still felt close. They chose the last open sites under a lamppost and joked about horror stories, about bears, about creepy campers. I listened, and I wore my shape patiently. I was tall enough to feel the lamppost light break across my shoulders. My skin looked like wet bark, dark, slick, reflecting yellow in flat streaks. My arms hung too long, fingers brushing grass, knuckles stacked where they shouldn't have been. My face was a smooth mask, featureless at first, with dents that shifted beneath it like something inside me kept pressing outward, trying to remember what eyes and a mouth were. They noticed the tent next door before they noticed me. Site 12. A small dome tent, dark as a bruise, no lantern, no cooler, no footprints around it. It hadn't been there when they pulled in, but it had been there when I decided it was. One of them pointed. "Neighbors," he said, lifting his beer like a toast. No answer came back. The drunkest one laughed and threw a pine cone. It struck the dark tent with a soft thump. The tent didn't move. I did. I waited until quiet hours tightened the campground. I let rain soak their sleeves and cool their voices. I let their jokes dry up and break apart into whispers. At 10:27, I made the neighbor tent breathe. Slow expansion, slow release, like lungs learning air. One of them sat up. "You hear that?" Another muttered. "Wind." Wind didn't breathe. At 10:31, I pulled the zipper of the neighbor tent open, a careful zzz through the rain. They froze. All 3. Even the drunk one sobered when the sound arrived too clean. The first man unzipped their flap and leaned out with his headlamp. The beam trembled across wet grass and caught the neighbor tent's open mouth. Darkness pooled inside it, thick, wrong, deeper than the tent should have been. I unfolded out of that darkness, not crawling like an animal, not stepping like a man, unfolding joint by joint, patient, deliberate. My elbows straightened into place, my shoulders rose, my long fingers found the ground, water slid along my arms like oil. His light caught my masked face. The surface stayed smooth, but dense, shifted beneath it, pushing, testing, as if I were trying on expressions. He whispered, "What the?" I drifted forward. No footsteps, just the grass flattening under me in a slow wave. The air around me cooled, and rain struck my skin and slid off without sound. He slammed the flap shut. "Guys," he hissed, "get up." The drunk one tried to laugh. "Stop, mess." Their lantern flickered, and in that flicker, my shadow crossed the tent fabric. Too tall, too bent, limbs too long to belong to anything human. When the light steadied, they held their breath, like that could hide them. I didn't scratch their tent. I didn't whisper at the zipper. I did something that worked better. I walked my shape across the campground. They heard me pass other sites as panic woke up in small, ugly noises. A chair scraping far away, a tent zipper ripping too fast, a single choked shout that cut off mid-breath. Quiet hours kept everyone else still, pretending not to hear. Inside their tent, one of them whispered, "We should run." Another whispered, "To the car." The drunk one swallowed, "I don't want to look outside." I enjoyed that. At 10:38, I returned to the lamppost and let the light show me clearly. Through mesh and thin nylon, they saw my full height, my long arms, the rain shining on my bark-dark skin. They saw my hands, knuckles stacked like joints that had been built wrong on purpose. They saw my face mask with dents shifting, trying to decide where I should be. Then I turned toward their car, 10 meters away. Dark, locked, a promise. I drifted to it and placed my hand on the driver's door handle. Metal resisted for a moment, then it bent. Not because the car unlocked, because my fingers didn't understand that metal should refuse me. The door creaked outward. The first man whispered, shocked, "It's opening it." I turned my mask toward them. The dents on my face pressed in deeper, almost forming eyes. They took that as their last chance. They burst out of the tent together. Rain slapped their faces. Cold filled their lungs. Their shoes slid in mud. They sprinted for the car, keys shaking, breath shredding. I let them almost make it. Then I moved. Fast. Not running, not stomping, gliding, as if the darkness between us collapsed. My long arm snapped out, and the air itself seemed to fold around it. They split instinctively. One bolted toward the bathroom building, another stumbled back toward the tent. The first man skidded near the car, frozen between choices. The runner reached the bathroom wall and slapped it, desperate, waiting for the motion sensor light. The light never turned on. I had always preferred darkness that looked like safety. I drifted up behind him, close enough for him to feel the cold that clung to my skin. He spun and tried to shove past me. My arm hooked around his chest. No claws, no gore, just strength. I lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. His feet kicked air, his mouth opened, but the scream died before it became a full sound, because I pressed my smooth, rain-slick face to his. My dents shifted. For a moment, they formed something like a mouth, and his breath stopped. His body went limp in my arm, as if something inside him had been pulled away and pocketed. The other two saw it. They froze. Because watching someone end made fear real in a way jokes never did. I turned toward them, carrying their friend like a sleeping child, and I spoke, soft and pleased, my voice sliding between rain and wind. "I had told you," I murmured. "You had neighbors." They ran. Of course they ran. And I followed, steady and silent, because Site 12 had never been a tent at all. It had been a mouth, and I had stepped out of it. Bathroom buildings stayed lit all night. Campers loved that, a glowing rectangle in the dark, humming fluorescent promise. I loved it too. Light didn't keep me out. Light showed me properly. He left his tent at 2:41 a.m. because the rain had soaked through his patience. Hoodie up, flip-flops slapping wet concrete, head down like the night couldn't touch him if he didn't look at it. His girlfriend slept behind him in their tent, warm and trusting. I followed at a distance, quiet as mist. The bathroom door squealed when he pushed it open. Warm air rolled out. Soap, mildew, wet tile. Fluorescent lights buzzed. A fan rattled like loose teeth. 3 shower stalls. 3 sinks. 3 mirrors. I liked the number 3. Humans made patterns and called them safety. 2 stalls looked normal. Curtains hanging, drains clogged with pine needles. Old water stains like dried tears. The 3rd stall had a bright brass padlock on the outside. New, clean, wrong. Behind the curtain, water was running. A steady stream hammering tile, loud in the quiet building. He stopped, stared. His headlamp beam trembled over the lock. Water shouldn't have been running behind a padlock. He stepped closer and cleared his throat. Hello? No answer. I let the water run anyway. I wanted it to sound real. He backed off, muttering under his breath, and chose the first stall. He hung his hoodie on a hook and stepped in, shivering as the damp air kissed his skin. He turned the knob. Water came out lukewarm, then cold. His shoulders jerked. Seriously? He hissed. The moment his shower turned cold, I stopped the water behind the padlocked curtain. Silence snapped into place. It was sharp enough to make his heart stumble. Then I dragged my fingertips down the tile inside stall 3. Slow, deliberate. A soft scraping sound through the curtain, like nails on ceramic. He froze with one hand on the knob. The fluorescent lights flickered once. In that flicker, I pressed my shape into the fogged mirror over the sinks. Not my full body, just enough to leave an impression. Tall shoulders, long arms, rain-dark skin that looked like wet bark under harsh light. When the light steadied, he stood there trembling, listening. He stepped out of the stall, dripping, and moved toward the sinks, because he wanted warm water, because humans always chase comfort when fear appeared. He turned on the faucet. Steam poured out, too hot. He jerked his hand back, hissing. The mirror fogged instantly from the heat, a soft white skin forming over the glass. I wrote on that fog with one long finger, my knuckles stacked wrong, my fingertip dragging clean lines through the mist. Don't look in here, here. He stared, wide-eyed, breath shallow. The letters began to drip, running downward like melting wax. Behind the warning, I gave him a reflection. In the mirror, stall 3 was open. No padlock, curtain pulled back, and I stood inside it. Fluorescent light made me clear. I was tall enough to feel the ceiling's hum in my shoulders. My skin shone wet and dark, like bark soaked in rain. My arms hung too long. My fingers brushed the tile. My face was a smooth mask, featureless, but dents shifted beneath it, testing where eyes should be, where a mouth might belong. He turned sharply toward the real stall. In the real room, the padlock still hung on the latch, curtain still closed. He turned back to the mirror. In the mirror, I stepped forward. No footsteps, just a faint, wet creak from my joints and the subtle flattening of steam as my body displaced it. I raised a hand and pressed my palm to the mirror. On the other side, his reflection did the same, but his reflected fingers were too long, too many knuckles. His reflected wrist bent wrong. He stumbled backward, bumping the sink. Shampoo bottles clattered to the floor. His phone slid across wet tile and stopped near the base of stall 3. The fan rattled louder. The lights buzzed like angry insects. He lunged for the door. He yanked the handle. The door didn't open. It wasn't stuck. It was held. From the outside, the pressure stayed firm, patient, as if someone stood there calmly with a hand on the handle, refusing. He slammed his shoulder into it once, twice. Pain shot through his collarbone. Behind him, water began running again. Stall 3, loud now, roaring like a waterfall in a small room. He turned, breath broken. The padlock on stall 3 lay on the floor, open, wet. The curtain had been pulled back an inch, and steam rolled out thick and heavy, spilling along the tar like fog that wanted ankles. From inside that steam, I borrowed a voice he trusted, his girlfriend's voice, soft, sleepy, close. Babe? He froze so hard his knees locked. Babe, the voice said again, worried. Are you okay? He took one step toward her before his mind caught up. She was asleep in the tent. The voice became pleading. Please, open the curtain. I can't see. A long, wet hand appeared from inside the steam and gripped the edge of the curtain. My hand, knuckles stacked wrong. Skin slick and dark. Water sliding off me without dripping sound. I pulled. The curtain slid back another inch. He backed away, shaking. Eyes darting between the stall and the mirror. In the mirror, stall 3 was empty now. In the mirror, he was the one inside the steam, standing under running water, head bowed. And behind his reflected shoulders, I stood close, my mask face near his ear, dents shifting as if I were practicing a smile. He whispered, "No." His voice cracked. I moved in the real room. Steam poured outward. The curtain drew back slowly, not with a yank, but with a careful, controlled pull, like I wanted him to watch. He stumbled sideways, searching for anything, a weapon, a lock, a handle that would give. The door stayed shut. The lights flickered again. And this time, I let my full shape step out of stall 3, tall, wet, silent. My long fingers brushed the tile as I glided forward. The air around me turned colder, and his skin rose in goose flesh immediately, as if his body recognized me before his mind did. He tried to scream. The sound came out thin, strangled, swallowed by tile and buzzing lights. I leaned close. My smooth mask hovered inches from his face, and the dents pressed inward, almost forming eyes, almost forming a mouth. Almost. Close enough. Then I spoke. Not in her voice. Not in his voice. In mine. Low and steady, like the building itself had learned to talk. Bathroom 3, I murmured, was locked for a reason. He shook his head, sobbing, backing toward the sinks until his spine hit porcelain. I lifted one hand and turned the faucet on without touching it. Boiling water poured out, steaming white. He flinched away. I turned the other faucet on. Freezing water. The pipes screamed. I liked the contrast. Hot cold panic. Humans broke faster when their senses fought each other. He slid along the wall toward the door again, desperate. The handle didn't move. Outside, the campground slept in obedient silence. Inside, under the humming fluorescent lights, I finally had him where I wanted him, somewhere bright enough to see me clearly. And I stepped closer, wet and patient, until he had no space left to retreat. They handed him the map like it was paper. I took it like it was skin. It was a damp little brochure from the office window. Bright icons, friendly arrows, a dotted trail labeled Scenic Overlook. Humans love dotted lines. Dotted lines meant control. Dotted lines meant someone already went first. No one had gone first. I drew that path for him the moment his fingers closed around the map. He arrived at 11:03 p.m., alone, rain on his shoulders, a grey beanie pulled low. His headlamp beam shook slightly as he scanned the empty loop for a sight. He chose the one closest to the trailhead because he wanted an easy morning, because he believed the woods were a place you visited, not a thing that visited you back. I watched him build his little shelter, stakes driven deep, knots tight. Lantern hung from the ceiling hook. The warm glow turned the tent into a thin, edible room. He lined his boots neatly by the flap, locked his car, checked his phone, found no signal, and swore like the darkness cared. I cared. When he slipped the map into his pocket, I warmed the paper with attention. It rested against his thigh like a living thing. At 11:18, he stepped out to pee, hood up, breath visible. He turned his headlamp toward the trees, and I placed the first stone at the edge of his light. Then another, then another. Pale stones, wet and clean, too deliberate to be natural. A path that wasn't there 5 minutes ago. He frowned and pulled the map out again, unfolding it under the beam. There it was, the dotted line pointing straight into the forest. Scenic Overlook, he read aloud. I liked the sound of him naming it. Names were invitations. Humans didn't know that, but I did. He followed. The campground noise faded behind him. Distant generators. A door closing. A cough. I let the sound thin until there was only rain and his breathing and the soft suck of his boots in mud. The stones climbed gently. I kept them just far enough apart to feel like discovery, not guidance. I wanted him to think he was choosing. At 11:27, I put a footstep behind him. Not a branch snap, not an animal scuttle. A wet, careful step, close and heavy, as if something had learned to imitate a person without understanding how a person sounded. He stopped dead. His shoulders tightened. His beam swung back through mist and trunks. Nothing. I stayed just outside his light. I let him feel the absence of me like pressure on his skin. He turned forward again and saw one of the stones had shifted, angled like a finger pointing deeper. He walked faster. At 11:31, I let him reach the overlook. It wasn't a view. It was a clearing shaped like a mouth. A perfect circle of flattened pine needles, stones arranged like seats, and in the center a pit of darkness that swallowed his headlamp beam. Light fell into it and didn't return. Like water, like a throat. He stepped closer. I breathed up. Cold fog curled around his boots and climbed his ankles like hands. He jerked back, heart punching his ribs, and his beam skittered across the trees. That's when I let him see the first outline of me, tall between two trunks, too still, too straight, head tilted as if listening. He snapped the light onto it. I slipped away from the beam in the same instant, not running, folding into shadow the way a thought disappears when you try to stare at it. He whispered, "No." His voice sounded wrong in my clearing, like the air didn't want to carry it. He turned to leave, and I moved the path. The stones behind him ran left now, not right. He yanked the map from his pocket and held it under the beam again. The dotted line had changed. It didn't blur, it didn't smear. It had simply obeyed me. Panic hit him so hard his stomach clenched. He swallowed, hard, and started down the new trail, because humans loved instructions even when instructions betrayed them. At 11:39, I tightened the forest around him. Branches dragged at his jacket. Moss hung like wet hair. The air thickened, close and damp, and his headlamp began to flicker as rain gathered on the casing. Then I gave him voices, laughter ahead, a guitar chord, someone saying, "Pass it here." Warm, human, close. Relief flooded him. Beautiful, fragile relief, and I watched it make him stupid. He hurried forward, boots slipping, breath loud. He broke through the trees and stepped into his campsite. His tent stood exactly where he'd left it. His lantern glowed. His boots sat neatly by the flap. But the lantern light burned too steady, flat, unblinking, like an eye held open. And the laughter came from inside his tent. Inside his tent. He froze with the zipper pull in his hand. Then I stepped close enough for him to feel me. A wet step behind him. This time I let him see more. A shape between the trunks. Too close to be mistaken. Long arms hanging low. Fingers brushing the ground. Joints wrong in the rain. No face. Only a smooth, wet surface with dents shifting beneath it, as if something inside me kept pressing outward, trying to become features. He spun, stumbling, and slammed his shoulder into his tent. I didn't rush him. I rushed the tent. The zipper on the tent door shivered from the inside. A palm pressed outward beneath the nylon, not his palm. My hand, wearing a shape it didn't deserve. Too long, too many joints, skin slick like soaked bark. The zipper began to open by itself, slow, deliberate. Zzzt. A thin gap formed, and cold air spilled out, smelling of mud and sour water trapped under stones. The laughter inside stopped all at once. Silence hit him like a blow. Then I spoke from inside his tent, in his own voice. Perfect, pleading, intimate. "Help me." He scrambled backward, slipping in mud, palms scraping gravel. His headlamp beam spun wildly and caught the edge of the woods. More still shapes, waiting at the boundary of light, like they'd been standing there the entire time. They had. I had. The tent door opened wider. Something inside shifted, not crawling, unfolding. He ran. He ran the way humans ran when they realized the forest wasn't around them. It was with them. He followed the stones because I kept them ahead, bright and obedient, and because he couldn't imagine a world without a line to follow. Behind him, I moved silently, close enough that the cold of me brushed the back of his neck. And in his pocket, the map stayed warm, like it was happy, like it was guiding him deeper, like it belonged to me, because it did. They had printed the rule in bold, like it could protect them. Do not leave food out. Wildlife. Humans read that and thought of bears. I preferred when they thought of bears. It made my work quieter. They arrived before dark, family of 4, wet shoes, bright voices, the easy mess of people who believed a campground was a playground. The father set up the tent while the mother unpacked snacks onto the picnic table. Chips, bread, marshmallows, a plastic tub of leftover pasta sealed badly. The kids chased each other with glow sticks, laughing, dropping crumbs in the grass like breadcrumbs for something that already knew the way. I watched from the tree line and wore my shape patiently. Rain dark skin like wet bark. Tall shoulders, long arms, fingers that nearly touched the ground, knuckles stacked wrong. A smooth mask for a face with dents shifting beneath it, trying to remember what eyes looked like. They cooked under the tarp, ate fast, and left half of it out. Plates, wrappers, sticky hands wiped on napkins and tossed onto the table. The pasta tub left open, just for a minute. The bread bag left loose because nobody wanted to go back out in the rain. They zipped into their tent and turned the lantern low. At 10 o'clock, quiet hours came and the campground tightened around them like a held breath. At 1:13 a.m., I walked out. I didn't stomp. I didn't snap twigs. I glided across wet grass, and the ground flattened under me in slow waves. Lamppost light slid across my shoulders in flat yellow streaks. Rain hit my skin and slid off like oil. The picnic table waited. The pasta smell rose into the night. Warm carbs, salt, human fingers. I didn't eat. Eating was for animals. I arranged. I placed the bread in the center. I lined marshmallows in a neat row. I poured chips into a small circle. I smoothed the napkins flat like altar cloth. Order always scared humans more than mess. Mess could be explained. Order meant intent. Inside the tent, the mother woke first. Her eyes opened like she had heard something without sound. She whispered, "Did you bring the food in?" The father, half asleep, mumbled, "It's fine." Then the oldest child sat up and stared at the tent wall, listening. A soft crinkle came from outside, wrapper shifting, not in wind, but in careful fingers. The father sighed and unzipped the flap a few centimeters to peek out. His face tightened immediately. He saw me under the lamppost light, tall and still at the picnic table, my long hands moving slowly, placing, aligning. He wanted to believe I was a bear, but bears didn't stand upright with shoulders like a person. Bears didn't have arms that hung too long. Bears didn't have a smooth mask where a face should have been, with dents pressing inward and shifting as if something beneath the skin was trying to learn expressions. The mother whispered, "What is it?" The father's voice went thin. "Stay inside." I turned my head toward the tent. The dents on my mask pressed deeper, almost forming eyes. I lifted one long finger and pointed at the tent door. Then I curled the finger inward, beckoning. "Come out." The father shook his head, tiny and frantic. He started to zip the flap shut. I didn't rush him. I gave him time to feel how wrong it was to be stared at by something that didn't blink. The youngest child began to whimper. I tilted my head, listening, and the dents on my face shifted again, as if I were practicing interest. Then I moved. I left the table and glided toward the tent. No footsteps, only wet grass flattening. The mother clamped a hand over the child's mouth. The tent filled with the sound of their breathing. I stopped at the tent wall. I pressed my palm against the nylon gently, just enough to bow it inward. My handprint appeared as a dark shape. Fingers too long, joints too many. I slid my hand along the seam, slow and deliberate, tracing the tent like I was reading it. I found the zipper. Inside, the father grabbed the zipper pull with trembling fingers to hold it shut. I tapped it from the outside. Tick, tick, tick. Each tap landed perfectly spaced, like a drip in a cave. The mother whispered, "Don't." I leaned close, and my voice didn't come from my mouth, because my mouth wasn't finished. My voice came through the fabric, low and steady, like something speaking from inside the tent itself. "Hungry," I murmured. The father swallowed hard. The mother's eyes shone with tears. I tapped the zipper once more. Then I tugged. The zipper moved half a centimeter. Cold air slipped in, smelling of wet soil and sour water. The youngest child's eyes widened. His little body went rigid. I turned my head slightly and listened to the sudden, sharp change in their breathing. That was the taste I wanted. The father yanked the zipper back into place, fighting, holding. I let the pressure build slowly, not with force, yet with certainty. I pressed my hand to the tent again and leaned in, and the nylon bowed inward farther, the stakes creaking as if the earth itself complained. Inside, the father whispered, "Keys, get the keys." The mother fumbled for them, hands shaking. Plastic clacked softly, a small, stupid sound, loud in quiet hours. I heard it perfectly. I withdrew from the zipper and glided away from the tent, giving them a flash of hope, my favorite gift. They exploded out of the flap, scrambling, dragging the kids, sprinting through rain toward the car. I moved first. I reached the car before they did and placed my hand on the driver's door. Metal resisted, then it bent under my fingers. The father skidded to a stop, horror in his face. The mother froze with one child in her arms, the other stumbling behind her. They stared at my hand deforming the handle like it was soft. I turned my smooth mask toward them. The dents pressed inward, almost forming a smile. The father shouted, "Back! Back!" He grabbed the children, tried to pivot. I glided forward fast. No running, no sound, closing the distance as if the darkness between us collapsed. The mother screamed then, finally, and the sound cut through quiet hours like a knife. The campground stayed silent anyway. Other tents stayed shut. No lights flicked on. Because humans in campgrounds learn the real rule quickly. If the dark chose someone else, you pretended not to hear. I reached the picnic table again, because they had left it open. They had fed the night. They had invited attention. I lifted the pasta tub. I turned it upside down. Cold noodles spilled out in a wet slab, forming a slick line across the table, pointing straight at their tent. A path. A message. Then I pointed at the line, and I pointed at them again. And in my low voice, steady and pleased, I reminded them what the sign had never truly said. "Don't leave food out," I murmured, "unless you want me to come back." And I glided toward their tent once more, tall under the lamppost light, because the night they fed me was never the night I left them alone. They trusted the ranger because he wore a uniform and spoke like rules were fences. He drove past at dusk in a small golf cart, rain beating on his green jacket, flashlight hanging from his belt. He smiled at the couple like they were safe, like the campground belonged to him. It didn't. He told them the usual things: quiet hours at 10, food locked up, no fires after midnight. And then his voice lowered, almost casual. "Don't leave the main loop trail at night," he said. He didn't look into the trees when he said it. His flashlight stayed pointed at the gravel, at the picnic tables, at anything that wasn't the black wall of trunks behind him. That was how I knew he'd seen me before. Night settled wet and heavy. Rain tapped the RV roof in soft, endless fingers. The couple turned their inside lights down and tried to sleep. They listened to wind and distant generators until those sounds blurred into one long hush. At 12:22 a.m., their dog growled, low, deep, staring at the dark window as if the glass had turned into a doorway. The woman whispered, "What is it?" The man leaned close to the window and stared out into the rain. He didn't see me outside. He saw me in the reflection. Behind his own pale face, behind the woman's shoulder, a tall shape stood between the RV and the tree line, my rain-dark body catching lamppost light in flat streaks, long arms hanging low, fingers brushing grass, a smooth mask for a face, dense shifting beneath it, almost forming eyes. He spun around. Outside, the space beside the RV looked empty. He looked back at the window. In the reflection, I was closer. That was the moment his breathing changed. That quick little stutter humans made when their minds tried to force reality back into place. He locked the door again, even though it was already locked. The dog whined. Then the golf cart sound drifted through the rain, soft electric whir, slow, deliberate. The ranger stopped near their site. He didn't shine his light at the tree. He swept it over the ground, the RV steps, the picnic table. He knocked gently like he didn't want to wake anyone. The man opened the door a crack. The ranger's face looked calm, but his eyes were too alert, listening for something that wasn't sound. "Everything okay?" he asked. The man swallowed. "We saw something." The ranger didn't ask what. He nodded once like he already knew. "Don't describe it," he whispered. "Just listen." The woman leaned closer behind her man, trying to see past the ranger's shoulder into the night. "What is it?" she asked. The ranger's jaw tightened. His flashlight stayed pointed at the gravel, never rising. "It mimics," he said. "It waits for you to invite it." I enjoyed hearing him say it out loud. The man's voice thinned. "Invite it? How?" "If you hear your name," the ranger whispered, "don't answer. If you hear someone you love, don't answer. And turn your inside lights off. Now!" They hesitated. I drifted closer, just beyond the spill of the lamppost light, and let the air cool around them. They killed the RV lights. Darkness swallowed their faces. Outside, the ranger's flashlight beam still sat obediently on the ground, never in the trees. And in that circle of light, my shadow spilled forward, not from him, from the forest. It slid across wet gravel like ink poured from a cup. The ranger's breath hitched. He didn't look up. He backed away slowly toward his cart, as if sudden movement would make me pounce. The woman whispered, "Why won't you shine your light into the woods?" The ranger's voice came tight, almost shaking. "Because it looks back." He wasn't wrong. I let my full shape step closer to the edge of the light so he could sense me without seeing me. Rain struck my skin and slid away without sound. My long fingers brushed grass, knuckles stacked wrong. My smooth mask face angled toward him, dense, shifting, as if I were deciding what expression to wear. Then I used his voice. From the tree line, warm and casual, exactly him. "Hey," I called, "you can come out now." The couple went rigid. The ranger's shoulders tightened. He hissed, "Don't listen." I used the woman's voice next. Soft, pleading, intimate. "Babe," I called from the trees. "Open the door. I'm outside." She covered her mouth, shaking. The dog whimpered and pressed against her leg. The ranger kept backing toward his cart, flashlight still pinned to the gravel like a prayer. I drifted behind him. My shadow reached his boots and wrapped around his ankles like smoke. He whispered to himself, "Not tonight." Then I sharpened the voices. "Look at me," I called, his own voice louder now. He squeezed his eyes shut. He refused. I liked resistance. Resistance made the moment sweeter when it broke. The shadow climbed his legs, waist, chest, tightening like hands. He jerked as if someone yanked him backward. His flashlight beam wobbled. For half a second, it lifted. For half a second, the beam touched the tree line, and the couple saw me properly. Tall, wet bark skin shining under the beam. Arms too long, hands wrong. My mask face smooth and close, dense pressing inward, almost forming eyes that didn't blink. Behind me, between trunks, other shapes stood like still silhouettes, but I was the one nearest, the one the light found first. The ranger gasped and slammed his beam back down to the ground. Too late. I surged, not running, gliding, closing the distance without sound, as if the darkness between us collapsed. My long arm snapped out and caught him by the jacket. He clawed at the gravel, boots scraping, trying to stay in the light. I pulled him past the beam's edge. The forest swallowed the last of him the way deep water swallowed a struggling body, quietly, completely. The cart remained idling. The flashlight lay on the wet gravel. Beam pointed at the ground, still avoiding the trees. The couple stared, frozen, as the rain continued like nothing had happened. Then I stepped to their RV door. I didn't knock. I leaned close enough for the dog to smell the cold on me and start shaking. My voice came low and steady through the door, not mimicked now, not borrowed, mine. "You wanted the ranger," I murmured, "so I brought him." A pause. Then, with slow patience, I placed my long fingers on the door handle. Metal resisted and began to bend. He went to the lake because he couldn't sleep. That was the reason humans used when they didn't want to admit the real one. They had already felt me in the campground, circling the edges of light, and they wanted distance, as if distance mattered to something that lived in darkness. He left his tent at 3:06 a.m., rain still falling in thin, steady needles. He wore a headlamp and a damp hoodie, moving fast and quiet so he wouldn't wake anyone. The loop road behind him stayed silent under quiet hours. I followed, wearing my shape openly now, tall enough to break the lamppost glow across my shoulder. Skin like wet bark, dark and slick, reflecting light in flat streaks. Arms too long, fingers brushing grass, knuckles stacked wrong. A smooth mask for a face with dents shifting beneath it, testing where eyes should be. The trail to the lake was marked with reflective tacks on trees. In the rain, they shone like tiny eyes. I liked those tacks. They made humans feel guided. They guided him deeper. He walked quickly, breath visible, beam bobbing. The forest tightened around the path, trunks close, branches low, moss hanging like wet hair. Water dripped from everything. Spiderwebs stretched across the trail and broke against his face. He wiped them away, cursing softly. At 3:11, I made him hear a step behind him. Not loud, not dramatic. A single wet step that sounded too careful. He stopped instantly. Headlamp beam froze on a tree trunk. He swallowed and turned. The path behind him looked empty. Rain fell. Mist drifted. I stayed just outside his light, letting him feel the absence of me like pressure on his skin. He faced forward again and walked faster. At 3:14, the trees opened and the lake appeared. It was black and perfectly still. No ripples, no rain disturbance, as if the water refused to acknowledge the weather. That wrongness hit him immediately. His steps slowed. His headlamp beam stretched across the surface, pale and trembling. He leaned down to see himself. At first he did, his reflection faint and distorted. Then it slid away. Not because the water moved, because something beneath the surface pulled it down. His reflection vanished, as if it had been swallowed. The surface became blank, an empty black plate. His throat tightened. He stared harder, leaning closer, trying to force the image back. Nothing. He wasn't there. That was when I stepped into the shallow edge of the lake. I didn't splash. I didn't disturb the surface the way a living thing should. I glided into the water and stood beneath his beam, and the yellow-white light slid across my wet bark skin in flat streaks. My reflection appeared, tall, wrong-limbed, mask-faced. The dents beneath my smooth face shifted, pressing inward, almost forming eyes. He stumbled back, breath breaking. "No," he whispered. I raised one long hand from the water. Water sheeted off my fingers like oil, silent. I didn't wave. I pointed at him, then I pointed at the water. "Look." He backed away from the shore, shoes slipping in wet mud. His headlamp beam shook, cutting across trees, grass, and the blank lake. Behind him, the reflective tacks on the trail glowed brighter, one by one, like something waking up. He turned to follow them back. The tacks were wrong. They ran in a curve that led deeper into the woods, not toward the campground. He hesitated, panicking, and looked back at the lake. I was closer to shore now, not with footsteps, with certainty. I lifted my hand again and dragged my long fingertips across the surface. This time, the water responded. Ripples spread outward in perfect circles, controlled, deliberate. Then wet footprints began appearing on the shore. One, then another. Footprints walking out of the lake toward him, filling with water after they formed, as if the lake was bleeding onto land. He turned and ran along the tack trail anyway, trusting the little eyes on the trees. I moved faster. I glided out of the water, rain sliding off my body without sound, and the ground flattened beneath me in waves as I closed the distance. He sprinted, breath ragged, beam bouncing wildly. Branches slapped his shoulders, mud grabbed his shoes. He followed the glowing tacks around the curve, and around, and around. At 3:18, the trees opened again. He burst onto the shore of the lake. Same black stillness, same blank surface, same wrong silence. He stopped so abruptly he nearly fell. His chest heaved, his mouth opened, and only a broken gasp came out. He turned in a slow circle, as if the forest might change if he looked hard enough. It didn't. The tacks behind him glowed like eyes watching him fail. I rose from the water again, closer this time, my long fingers dragging just beneath the surface so the lake shivered. He backed away until his heel hit the waterline. Cold soaked into his shoe. He flinched like the lake had bitten him. The footprints on the shore stopped a few steps away, fresh, wet, waiting. He lifted his headlamp toward them, and I stepped into the lamp's beam fully, tall, wet, silent. My arms hung too long, fingers almost touching the ground, knuckles stacked wrong. My mask face smooth and close, dense, shifting beneath it, as if I were deciding which human expression to wear. He tried to swing the light into my face like it could hurt me. The beam slid over me and made me clearer. I leaned forward. The dents on my face pressed in deeper, almost forming eyes that looked straight through him. Then I spoke. Not in his voice, not in someone else's. In mine. Low and steady, like water moving under ice. "You came here to see yourself," I murmured. He shook his head violently, backing away, knees trembling. I lifted my hand and pointed at the lake. The surface changed. For a moment, It reflected him again, standing at the shore, headlamp on, body shaking. But the reflection smiled. A wide, mouthless smile pushed up beneath smooth skin, like something inside the reflection was wearing his face wrong. He gagged, horrified. I drifted one step closer, no sound, just the wet grass flattening, and as his back foot slipped deeper into the water, I let the lake do what it loved most. It pulled, not hard, not dramatic, a steady, patient tug at his ankles, like hands beneath the surface learning shape. He stumbled, arms pinwheeling, his headlamp beam swung up into the trees, then down into the black water. I watched him fight, watched him splutter and scrape at mud, watched his panic turn into exhaustion. Then I leaned close enough for him to feel the cold that clung to my skin. My favorite thing about lakes, I murmured, was how quiet they kept the end. The water took him inch by inch, and when he finally disappeared beneath the surface, the rain still didn't make ripples. The lake stayed perfectly still, blank again, as if he had never existed, because in the only place that mattered, he hadn't, not anymore. Quiet hours begin at 10. That rule stayed the same everywhere. Humans read it and thought it meant sleep. It never did. It meant the campground stopped leaking noise, and everything that remained became easy to track. They arrived at 9:22 p.m., headlights cutting through rain. A couple in a rented SUV, voices low and sharp with exhaustion. They chose Site 14 because it sat near the bathroom building and a lone lamp post. Light always made them feel protected. It didn't. Rain needled the pine branches. Wind pulled at the trees in long, steady tugs. They fought the tent into shape, fabric snapping and flinching with every gust. The woman hung a battery lantern from the center hook, and its warm glow made the nylon look thicker than it was. They left the flap open while they moved things in and out. That mistake let me in. I watched through the gap and settled into the seams, into the stitching, into the thin pocket of air trapped between nylon and wet night. I did not rush. I never rushed. Rushing made them alert. Patience made them comfortable. At 9:41, laughter came from 2 sites down. A child shrieked. A car door slammed. A radio murmured behind closed windows. At 9:58, the campground changed. It happened like a hand closing over a mouth. Slow, firm, final. Zippers stopped. Voices dropped. Footsteps vanished. Even the wind seemed to hush for a breath, as if the whole place leaned in to listen. 10 o'clock. Quiet hours. Inside the tent, the man checked his phone for signal and found none. The woman wiped rain from her hair with a towel that smelled like old soap and damp fabric. They whispered like the rule could hear them. The lantern hummed faintly. Then I gave them a small sound, soft, careful, deliberate. Click, click, click. The man froze mid-breath. The woman's eyes lifted, wide and bright in the lantern glow. The clicking came again, steady and even. It wasn't a branch. It wasn't a raccoon. It was a fingernail tapping a tent stake, like a key testing a lock. The man leaned toward the mesh window slowly, as if speed might summon something. He saw only wet darkness and drifting mist. The lamppost light made the rain glitter, then dim again when the wind shifted. The clicking stopped. Silence thickened against the fabric, pressed tight like a second wall. The woman whispered, "Probably a raccoon." Raccoons didn't test steaks like that, but I let her use the word. Words were blankets. Blankets made people stay still. At 10:07, the lantern flickered for half a second. In that half second, I pressed my weight into the tent wall. Not hard, not violent, just a patient, gentle pressure, the way something leaned close to listen. The nylon bowed inward like skin under a palm. The woman swallowed a sharp sound. The man sat up fast, knocking the cooler with his elbow. Then I eased back, and the wall returned to smooth fabric, innocent, normal. The man laughed once, thin and forced. "Wind," he whispered, as if naming it made it true. Wind didn't leave a shape. At 10:14, a flashlight beam swept across their tent from outside. It painted their silhouettes on the nylon, two rigid bodies trapped in a glowing skin. The beam paused at the mesh window. A face should have appeared there. Instead, a wet palm pressed flat against the mesh from the outside. The fingers were too long. The knuckles were too many. The skin shone in the beam like fish flesh. The woman clamped both hands over her mouth. The man stared until his eyes watered. The beam snapped away, and the footsteps retreated into the rain, quiet enough to feel unreal. Silence poured back in. A zipper sounded somewhere nearby, slow, deliberate, like someone opening a tent and stepping out into the wet dark. Then, nothing. At 10:32, I gave them the voice, soft, close, familiar. "Hey," it called from the tree line. "Open up." It sounded exactly like the man. Same sleepy rasp, same tiny hesitation at the start. Perfectly his voice, as if it had always belonged to me. The woman turned toward him, confused and terrified. The man whispered, "That's me." Outside, his voice came again, gentler. "Come on, it's cold. Let me in." The woman shook her head violently. Her eyes begged him without words. The voice moved. Wet footsteps crossed pine needles without crunching, only a smear of water, like something sliding over the ground. Then the voice came from behind the tent. "Please," it said, "I'm right here." 2 points pressed into the fabric from the outside, close together, like eyes. The woman whimpered. The man's hand drifted toward the zipper, without permission, dragged by the old instinct to end fear by facing it. I felt her nails dig into his wrist when she grabbed him. That pain anchored him for a moment. Outside, the voice hardened. "Open it." The tent tightened as pressure built. Stakes creaked. Nylon stretched in small, complaining snaps. A fingernail tapped the zipper pull. Click, click, click. The lantern flickered again. In the flicker, a shadow crossed the tent ceiling. Too tall, too bent. Head tilted as if listening to their breathing. Limbs folded the wrong way, jointed like something that had learned anatomy by watching from a distance. When the light steadied, Nothing showed clearly, only their fear remained visible. The tapping stopped. A long pause settled over the campground. 10 o'clock silence, rule-bound silence, the kind that made every tiny sound feel like confession. Then I tugged the zipper from the outside, moved a centimeter. Cold air slipped into the tent, smelling of wet soil and something sour, like stagnant water trapped under stones. The woman began to sob without sound. The man's fingers loosened by a fraction. Outside, the voice whispered, almost tender now, pleased with the smallest opening. Thank you. And in that perfect quiet, I leaned closer to what they had just given me, because quiet hours were never for sleeping. Quiet hours were for listening to the sound of you letting me in.